Did you know that Steam has a secret console tab that you can run a bunch of commands in? And even if you have heard of this, stick around because I did some digging and found some stuff that you definitely have not seen before, like a bunch of undocumented commands that I found by literally dumping all the strings and all the DLLs and stuff. I'm Theo Joe, and let's get into it. Now, to get this console tab to show up, there's actually a few different ways. The easiest, simple way to do it right now, if Steam is already running, is to actually go into your browser or the run box and type in this command, steam://open/console. This is a special URL protocol, it's called. Anyway, it should cause the console tab to open. Alternatively, you can get it to show at launch by using command line arguments when you launch Steam, and specifically those would be -console or -dev. And you can use this through the command prompt, or more likely as a shortcut, you can just add it to the end of the target box. And the difference is using -dev actually gives you additional abilities, like you can press F12 and it will bring up a dev window very similar to what you would see in Google Chrome or another browser, and you could do a whole bunch of stuff because Steam basically is using a browser behind the scenes to render all this stuff. I also noticed if you press F5, it causes Steam to close and reopen. I think it just refreshes the window. It doesn't actually restart the process, but still. Anyway, you're probably wondering about what commands you can use in this console tab. And one way to find them is to literally use the find command, and that lets you search for and filter any commands that contain a certain string. So I wanted to find every possible command, so I literally went letter by letter and did find A, find B, find C, and so on, and then just combined them all and deduplicated it. So I found every single possible command. And interestingly, it seems to not just list commands, but also settings. Like you can see a bunch of these are whatever equals some setting, and you can change those, as well as launch arguments, which are the ones that begin with a hyphen, and those are other ones in addition to console and dev that we saw that you could use to run Steam with whatever option. I actually made an Excel spreadsheet, I'll link it in the description if you want to download it, that basically organized all this data a bit more conveniently. So I actually made tabs at the bottom with different categories of the commands that it spits out. For example, commands that what I call pure functions that don't take any arguments, ones that do take arguments, as well as command line arguments, and ones that appear to be settings that you can change. So they have an equal sign in there. I also put the descriptions for each and kind of split them and put them in their own column next to each thing. So those are what I would call the known commands and arguments and stuff that obviously the Steam app itself tells you when you search for them. But there are some other ones that are not documented that I found, and I did this by literally using the sysinternals strings tool, which dumps strings within a binary file, and did that on a bunch of the DLLs. And then I simply filtered out the ones that began with a hyphen and then also looked like they were a command line argument. So in that Excel spreadsheet, there's also a tab for those, and I just filtered out the ones obviously that were not included in the known ones. And these are all going to be possible launch arguments, by the way. I didn't test all of these. Some of these might not even be for Steam itself. For example, the ones that begin with 2 hyphens, those are probably actually for Chromium, the underlying browser that Steam might use behind the scenes. So I wouldn't expect these to work, but I just put them all anyway. However, some of these are actually working commands that do something. For example, I noticed that this one, exit Steam, if you run that, even while Steam is running, it will cause Steam to close. And this is not one that's in that find list. Another one I noticed is this test OOBE, which stands for test out of box experience. And that one seems to make it so it forces you to log in again even if you were already logged in. So that is one thing you can let everyone know in the comments. If you happen to find some of these that actually work and do something cool, then let us know. Another interesting thing I noticed is that if you run the Steam executable with any kind of command line argument while Steam was already running, it'll actually show in the console tab that command you ran. So I'm not sure if this means there's some way that I'm not aware of that will let you run different commands that are normally have to be run in the console, but run it as a command line argument, but it's just something interesting I noticed. Now, as for the actual commands, and again, these all are ran through the console tab. You can't run these through the command line for it, but there are some interesting ones I thought were worth mentioning. For example, this stats GUI one, this shows some kind of stats debug panel, and you can see on the left, there's sort of like a tree that you can expand to find various stats and then add it to the graph using this add stat button, or you can add it as a rate of change instead. Another kind of interesting one is this profile show GUI command, which seems to spawn a whole bunch of different windows for profiling, and profiling sort of means benchmarking or measuring. Anyway, the windows by themselves don't seem to show anything, and I think you probably have to use this along with other profiling commands, but it might be something worth looking into. Here's one that's kind of cool. It's this licenses print command, and this will actually show you all the games and stuff that you own on your Steam account, and not only that, but also when you bought it, as well as how you acquired it, whether you bought it with a credit card, your Steam wallet funds, or even just redeemed a key. I believe you can also access this information through the wallet interface somewhere, but this way you can get literally all of it in one place and copy it. Another notable one is user friends. This lists all your friends out as well as their Steam IDs. Another one is apps running. This one might come in handy. It shows you which apps that are tracked by Steam are actually running right now. Here's kind of an interesting one that I haven't really tested too much, but just the description alone is neat, and that is mic input file. And the description says, causes voice data to be read from the specified file instead of from the microphone. So it seems like you could basically use this to kind of play a sound effect instead of using your microphone, although I assume this would probably only apply within Steam chat, voice chat type thing. There's also several commands that let you download files for games where if you're an advanced user, this might come in handy somehow. For example, there's download depot. I'm not going to really get into what a depot is, but on a basic level, it's kind of like a big grouping of files. For example, if a game developer has different versions for Linux versus Windows, maybe one of them would be in one depot, the other in another. And this command lets you download such a depot if you own that game. And you could look up info about that on a few different websites. The main one would probably be SteamDB. Similarly, there's one called download item, which lets you download individual files and workshop items, actually. So maybe if you want to download it outside the game running, you could do that. And again, you have to own the game to do that. Another even more advanced one is download chunk. And this is if you needed to download a very individual specific file, you could download that part of it from the depot. Although this one, you have to know a lot of information that is hard to come by, apparently. You need to know the exact SHA 256 hash, it's called, of that file, which SteamDB does not tell you, so you'd have to research more into that. But for example, that could be useful if you wanted to get a specific version of a file that was in a specific patch from a previous version of a game or something like that. Next, in addition to the commands, we already kind of talked about launch arguments. Here's a couple other interesting ones. For example, -silent. This is a good one to know if you want to create a shortcut for like startup. This will launch Steam just to the system tray, so it doesn't open the window. Another potentially useful one is the -big picture argument combined with the -windowed argument, and that will actually launch the big picture mode, but in windowed mode, so it's not full screen if you wanted to maybe just do that for some reason. Another potentially useful one is the user chooser argument, which will launch Steam and have it show the user choice window even if you're already logged in, so you don't have to use the change account option. Steam does have an option to always show this menu, but this could be useful if you have a couple different accounts and you almost always use one, but every once in a while you need to launch and use a different one. You could maybe create a shortcut just in those scenarios. So definitely a lot of potentially useful command line arguments depending on your situation. I would just look through them all and see if any of them apply to you. Also, in the console, you can also change a bunch of these other setting type commands. These are the ones that have like an equal sign, and those are like the default values or the current values. I tried looking through these. I didn't find any that probably you need to change. And again, you could probably change a lot of these through the settings anyway, but still, you can look through them and let us know if you find anything interesting in the comments. And again, that's all in that Excel file that I link in the description. So let me know if you never heard of the console tab before, or maybe you have but didn't know about some of the stuff that I talked about. If you want to keep watching, next up I'd recommend a video where I talked about one browser setting that you should change no matter what browser you use. It actually has a pretty big security impact. I'll put that link right there you can click on. Also, if you enjoyed the video, you found it useful, definitely give it a big giant thumbs up. It really helps out. And if you want to subscribe, I try to make videos about twice a week, so it should be worth it. Anyway, as usual, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.